recommend her stuff. All right, Deborah, are you here?
I am.
Okay. So you said how to invite, engage, market to folks with a more mainstream worldview. For example, local councils and businesses into regenerative and living systems-based approaches. What a great question. Where are you based? You're in the UK somewhere?
I'm in Dorset, in the south of the UK.
Okay. Well, there's the $1 million question. Hey, how do you get the normies on board with all these radical ideas? Well, first of all, I'm sure you have a lot of your own ideas and have had some of your own successes in this. The most important thing I can recommend on this, and in fact, for everybody on this call in your own ways, whenever you're trying to do something that you don't know how to do, you're not even sure if it can be done. Whenever you've got something like that, I urge you all to find somebody who's already doing it and learn from them. Seek out mentorship on that specific thing. I can give you my sort of generalized marketing advice and be helpful. But what will be even more helpful, frankly, is that you talk to somebody who's already done this thing. Look for role models. Who has actually achieved these results? Look for stories. Post this on Facebook. Ask to be tagged. Post on every Facebook group you're in. Can anyone give me a case study, a real life situation scenario where somebody has actually met with a local council or business and they've passed a policy around regenerative living system-based approaches? Because they're out there. There's tons of stories, and there's probably podcasts dedicated to this shit. But we often don't know. So yes, of course, if anyone knows of any, right now on this call, you can just click reply to Deborah's post, and she'd be very grateful, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I see the one to Phoebe. Thank you. Yeah, she's amazing. Thank you, Alicia.
Yeah. So, of course, there are a number of things. There's transition towns is one. As a model that's actually created some shifts.
I work for them.
Yeah. But that's the most important thing. I will share one story that I do know of, and this came from a woman I knew 20 years ago, Emily. She lived in, I think it was Prince George, BC, and they were trying to make some changes for public transit to make it more accessible. And there were a few city councilors that were hard to deal with, but there was one in particular who was really difficult. And was obstinate, I think probably more right-wing conservative, and just looked at them as young hippies and just had no time for them. So what they did was they created, I think it was just an hour-long lunchtime presentation called Public Transit in a Winter Climate. And they just presented the facts and education, just here's the stats on how many people are taking buses and how many buses there are and the routes and all this. So they really laid it out. But then at the tables, I think each table had a different topic, and they invited the people to brainstorm solutions. And that grumpy ass old, city councilor came up to them at the end. He said, "This is the best, most productive meeting I've ever been to in my life. Thank you so much. You have my support." Yeah. So one big thing is, of course, we can't, if we look at them as the enemy and talk to them as the enemy, it's over. Just game over. They can't be looked at that way. And when we're looking at nonprofit work, the exact same principles apply as marketing, except Island A is not the problem of a person, it's a problem of a community, right? And it's what does the community want for itself, but it's the same idea. But then if we take it to the city councilors, it's still important to look at what's Island A for them or what's Island B for them. What are they struggling with? What do they want? How can you help? This also brings up the topic of organizing. And I don't know if you know the Industrial Areas Foundation. So there's somebody, they're based out of the States, but it's the kind of Saul Alinsky method of organizing. And their basic idea, and I'll lay it out and I'll tie it back to marketing, as I had a friend who got really deep into this. Organizing and activism are different things. Activism is you show up, you scream a lot, you draw a lot of attention, you do publicity stunt kind of things. We've all seen that. But organizing is you spend years building relationships with people, going for lunch with people in the community and in various institutions, so that when you need to apply some pressure, you have people you can call on who can bring their constituents, and you can get 500 people down to City Hall. Because I promise you, if you can show up with 500 people at City Hall, they're now listening because they want to be reelected. But anyways, that's the background. But the specific approach, as I understand it, is you figure out what's the policy you want to change, and you get really, really specific about that policy. And of course, there's lots of examples of cities that maybe have the policy you want, but you get that very specific. Then second, you ask yourself, who's the person who would actually have the power to pass this, or the people? Got to make that list of the people who actually have the authority to do something about it. Number three, you meet with those people and you ask them nicely. And they probably don't do anything. Number four, if they don't move, you apply pressure. But in that first meeting, it's like, we'd like to help you get reelected. You want to be reelected? We'd like to help you with that. Here's something, this can make you look so good. This is going to provide local jobs. It's going to be an inspiration to the community, and to the world. It's going to get you back in office. And if you say no to this, we will apply pressure to you. I remember in Edmonton, they were trying to pass something around urban bees and chickens. And this had been batted around for a while. And a fellow stood up and he said to the city council, look, you've three choices. You can legalize urban beekeeping, you can legalize urban chickens, or you can legalize both. Those are your three options right now. Doing nothing is no longer a choice for you. It's a gutsy thing to say. So, so to tie that to marketing, results you want, and you got to think about the hubs. Who are the hubs? Who are the people who actually have some influence? In this case with the policy, but it's the same principle. It's not just trying to reach the random person on the street and educating, because the educational campaigns, I'll just say that, those don't do shit for the most part. Trying to reach people to educate them, that's not what does it. What really works is this kind of policy change at the end of the day. But the way that works is they have to know that you're some level of a threat. They have to know that you're not just some concerned citizen acting by yourself. There was that woman, oh gosh, I'm forgetting, what is her name? Grace Lee Boggs. I think it was her. And somebody asked her, what do you do when you're just one person? And her response was, don't be one person. Yeah, don't be one person. You will lose. You can't beat the machine as one person. But if you get a group of people together and you get a consensus, and sometimes you'll have different allies around different policies. So that's the other thing. You can look at a policy and you think, who are the hubs? Who are all the communities that might care about this? And they may be against another policy you would be wanting to pass. They may be on the other side, but you just focus on what's on the table there. Remember Winona LaDuke? She came to meet with a group of young activists that I was a part of 25 years ago. And there was a thing she'd done where they'd preserved some woodlands, but they'd had to partner with some redneck hunters. And somebody said, how could you partner? They must have been racist. And she said, well, yes, but you focus on what's on the table. And as you do that, then you also build relationships, and there is some understanding. But so for each specific policy, you've got to think, who could I reach out to? Same for fundraising. You want to raise funds for a certain film on fracking or something. What are all the groups that might have an interest in spreading the word about fracking? It's not just the anti-fracking groups. There are water issue groups. There are indigenous rights groups. There are, so you have to think laterally a bit. And once you've mapped that out for each of these policies, then you've got to think, okay, then who are the key people in each of those scenes, in each of those communities, each of those organizations and you start meeting. One of the things that you can do, of course, is you can call a meeting of all those people. Say, hey, we've got this policy we want to change. Before we meet with city council, we want to get our ducks in a row. We'd like to get us all in a room, get some consensus on this. Because if you can find consensus amongst all those people on a policy, you're going to have a much easier time. If you can say, look, here's a letter and it's signed by these 20 organizations, that's much better than you sitting there saying, as a concerned citizen, I'd like you to look at this. You may have thought of all of that before. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what I got.
Thank you. Let's think about that.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for your beautiful work. All right. And the last thought I would say is, if you're hosting fun social events, invite the city council to build relationships that way. It doesn't all have to be heavy and threatening. It can also be, we're doing this cool thing. Please come as our special guest, and you give them a shout out and make them look good. If you're doing a movie screening, there's that film that just came out about regenerative agriculture, and there may be others. Invite them to a screening. Please come to the screening of our movie, and wine and dine them and make them look great, and thank them for all their good work. That stuff is important to host networking events. I'll tell you one of the things politicians will come to. If you say, look, come to this event because the who's who of this scene will be there. And if you want to make connections for the next election, this is a great opportunity to shake hands, get photos, meet people, get support. If you want it, come to this. You giving them that opportunity. When you call their wrangler will fit it in. Yeah, because you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them.